What is going on, everyone? This is Zach back here with another episode of Clutch Crew Sports. And here in today's episode, we are going to give a recap of the NFL's wild card weekend. In particular, we're going to be talking about the teams that lost and some big questions that remain ahead for the losers. And then we're going to take a look forward to the divisional round matchups and kind of do our regular previews and score predictions for each of the divisional round matchups. So, with that being said, it's going to be a lot of fun. And now let me introduce you to the rest of the crew.
What's going on, guys? It is Connor, the co-host with the most. And, I had a pretty good wild card weekend other than the Steelers, getting blown out. But I don't even, unless you're like a super truly biased Steelers fan, I'm pretty sure we all saw that one coming. But I went 5 of 6 on my predictions this week. So it was pretty good all around. And I'm enjoying, right now, before coming on, the Hurricanes are playing the Boston Bruins and are winning 5-1 at the moment. So, let's go Canes.
And what's up, guys? It's Nate here. It's been a few weeks since I've been on with like finals and the holidays and everything got kind of crazy, but I'm glad to be back. I'm excited to talk about all the games from this weekend. Obviously, the Pats wasn't a very fun game for them, but looking forward to talking about everything that went on and glad to be back.
Yeah, definitely. I think some viewers and stuff might be wondering what happened to Nate. It's been so long. But Nate is back for the playoffs. Of course, he, has had a busy schedule, so no problem with Nate being out of the lineup, and he's back here with the NFL playoffs to talk about. So let's go ahead and get started, guys, and talk about the 3 AFC team losers in the playoffs this week. So those losing teams, which just so happens that 2 of them, the Steelers and Patriots, are Connor and Nate's favorite teams. So kind of good that it works out for this discussion. I know they didn't want it to be like this, but they will definitely have some knowledge talking about their teams. And then I will talk about the Las Vegas Raiders. So let's start first things first, guys, with the Steelers. Now, Big Ben is going to retire. It's pretty much a done deal at this point. He's played his last game now with the Steelers, but there's a big question there. Who's going to be, life after Big Ben, essentially? Who is going to be the next quarterback for 2022 at least? That's the question, because the longer you go down, the higher chance is going to be some rookie QB. But for this next season anyways, who do we think the next starting quarterback will be? Mason Rudolph, Dwayne Haskins, somebody else, a rookie? Connor, fill us in on what you think it's going to be like.
Yeah, so obviously, it's impossible to replace a guy like Ben Roethlisberger, future first ballot Hall of Famer, led the team to so many wins, is top 10 in almost every single passing category in NFL history. But, to me, I honestly don't think it's going to be at least I don't want it to be one of the guys on the roster right now. I know, like, this article snippet that you pulled out says that all signs are pointing to Mason Rudolph. I know Deontay Johnson actually came out and said something like he sees a lot in Mason Rudolph, but the problem with Mason Rudolph, obviously, is that, he's had his opportunities to play and he's looked really bad for the most part in all of them. Like, he won a couple games that year when Roethlisberger was out for the whole season. But then, he started, losing again. He had to trade time with Devlin Hodges. He got hit in the head by a helmet from Myles Garrett. Like, all this stuff happened in that time. And, he really just hasn't improved at all in the time that he's been here. You'd think playing underneath a veteran quarterback like Roethlisberger would, give you that time to develop. And he hasn't really shown any strides. And then obviously we also have Dwayne Haskins, who with him, it's just we haven't seen anything of him in this offense. Like, we obviously saw how he played when he was with Washington, which wasn't very good. But, this is a different offense, a different team. And we really haven't gotten to see any of him at all in the regular season. Like, he played in the preseason a little bit and looked okay at times, but preseason is just preseason. Like, it doesn't mean anything. So, if I have to guess, though, for me, I think it's going to end up being we're going to draft someone, and that's going to start this year because, the Steelers, they're going to be in that kind of like high 20s area in the draft. And the quarterback class this year is not strong. So there's not going to be a lot of teams, like last year when there was all these quarterbacks taken early in the draft. That's not going to be the case this year. Kenny Pickett will probably get taken pretty early, but after that, like the talent level and the draft grade for these guys goes down quite a bit. You've got guys like Matt Corral and Desmond Ridder that are going to be entering the draft, and Sam Howell is going to be entering the draft officially. So, it's just there's going to be quarterback talent there, in my opinion, at that 20, 21, 22 or whatever spot they're going to be at. And I think they're going to take advantage of that because, like I said, you're not going to have all these teams that are going to be going and drafting quarterbacks in the top 10 picks this year because it's just not worth the pick this year like it was last year when you had, Lawrence and Fields and Mac Jones and all those guys in the quarterback class. So I think it's going to end up being a drafty, I would like if we could go out and get someone like a Russell Wilson or an Aaron Rodgers in free agency, but unfortunately, all that kind of was hyping up when, kind of like the middle to late part of the season, but now, there's all this stuff coming out. Looks like Aaron Rodgers, he's on his way to another MVP award. Probably going to end up staying in Green Bay just because he'll be able to really dictate like what he wants from the franchise. And of course they're going to give it to him because he's Aaron Rodgers. And then also it kind of sounds like Russell Wilson's kind of like calmed down about his wanting to go other places. And well, in all likelihood, looks like he's going to return to Seattle. So that really only leaves kind of like the free agents that we had last year at QB, which is guys like Andy Dalton and Jameis Winston and, Ryan Fitzpatrick, guys who, I really don't think the Steelers want to go out and sign. So, in my opinion, I think it is going to be like, I think Rudolph will probably get a couple games to start the season just so that whatever rookie we end up drafting, can at least have some time to get ready. But I definitely think by, week 3, week 4, week 5, it's going to be whatever rookie we draft that's going to take over at QB for the year and hopefully for the future.
All right. Interesting stuff there from Connor, the Steelers guy. Nate, let's go over to you now and talk about your Patriots team. So definitely was an up and down season for the Patriots. But what do you think went wrong the most with this team in the final game here against Buffalo? And what do you think they need to do to improve the most going into next season?
Yeah, so I think, like you said, it was an up and down season. I think Mac Jones impressed me a lot more than I expected him to. I think he wasn't amazing, but he looked very good for a rookie, better than I thought he would do. And I think with his maturity, he's going to take another step forward next year. But I think it was kind of up and down because they were breaking in a young guy. They couldn't necessarily do everything they wanted on offense, and they had all those free agents come in, and they're kind of getting everyone like situated and all that. But I think that I don't know that so much necessarily went wrong in the game versus the Bills as much as they really just got outplayed and outcoached. I mean, it kind of started with that pick that Mac threw to who is that now? Poyer or whatever in the end zone. Or Micah Hyde. Yeah, it was. I mean, it was basically a perfectly thrown ball. He just made a great play on it, and then took 7 points off the board, and the Bills went and scored, and that kind of got things. That's where things started to get ugly there. But it was really just concerning the way they couldn't stop the run. That's kind of had been a pretty strong unit of the team all year, and it's kind of something that has always been a big part of Belichick defenses. So I don't know whether to chalk that up to just a bad game plan versus the Bills or bad coaching or personnel or what. Because for the most part, they're pretty healthy too. So I think going into 2022, that blowout loss doesn't really concern me too much. I didn't expect them to be contending for a Super Bowl or anything this year. I think the Bills, on paper, still have more talent on their roster. So I don't think that says too much about next year's expectations. I just think that they've got to really keep working on getting those new guys from last year integrated. Most of them have made a pretty decent impact so far, but I think the biggest thing is for Mac Jones to take a step forward and for them to try and get some more offensive playmakers in the draft. I think the receivers they got last year are solid, but they've always been number 2 guys in every team they've been on. I think if they could find a real number 1 receiver now that N'Keal Harry is basically confirmed he was a bust, that would go a long way. And then I'd like to see more consistency out of the defense next year. That was also kind of the reason they're up and down so much. Some games they like really dominated, and then other games like we saw on Saturday they didn't. So I think there's people that are kind of like already writing off like, oh, is Belichick washed? Is all that kind of stuff, and that's probably what's going to be all off season on First Take and all that. But I think it's not time to panic yet. I think I'll see how their off season goes, who they can bring in and all that. But yeah, I don't want to say there's like a big like glaring, one single issue needs to be addressed. It's kind of just like they got to regroup and I guess going to next year and take a step forward as an entire team.
All right, yeah, that's a good answer.
Yeah, and I mean, I will say this too for Belichick's, like, all the people saying that Belichick is, like, if anyone's saying he's washed, like, they're completely wrong. I mean, like, I think in my mind, what he was able to do with this team, being basically a brand new team, they went out and spent all this money in free agency and revamped the entire team, a rookie quarterback, all this stuff, just to be able to, get to where they were, have a chance all season to win the division when a lot of people didn't really give them a chance to do that. And, in the end, like you said, they just lost to a better team. The Bills are established now. They're one of the top teams in the AFC. So, I applaud Belichick for what he did this year. So, if anyone's saying he's washed, then they're wrong.
Yeah, and there's no real one specific thing, too. I think Nate made a lot of good points. Speed would be one thing I think really that they need to get better on. But yeah, definitely sometimes the way they play, leads to success as well. But anyways, let me go ahead now and talk about the Las Vegas Raiders, who lost to the Bengals on Saturday, and they lost in a controversial way, maybe down at the end there, last second, Derek Carr with a chance to win, and he throws an interception and seals the fate for the Raiders, and they still haven't won a playoff game dating back to the season that they were in the Super Bowl way back then. So the Raiders still looking for that postseason success. And the big question with them now is about Rick Bisaccia. I don't know how you really say his name, but he was their interim head coach, as everybody knows, when John Gruden quit, or he left, but fired, resigned, whatever you want to say. He left the team. Now, the recent news about the Raiders that's pretty big is Mike Mayock is out as the GM, which really doesn't bode well for Rick to remain the head coach after, being the interim coach most of the season. And personally, I agree with the Mayock decision, but I think they should probably keep Rick based on how good he did with this team navigating the season. So many things happened to the Raiders this year. I mean, you have the whole Henry Ruggs situation there. You have the John Gruden situation. You have the crazy win streaks and loss streaks that they had playing in the AFC West, against very tough competition with 3 other good teams in that division. And I think Rick was able to really keep the team steady. And one of the things too that I sometimes forget, being like a super fan of the NFL and stuff, is in a head coach, you really don't need to have a brilliant play caller, a great offensive mind, or a great defensive calling ability. You need a leader. You need a guy that can lead the team and oversee the whole operation, and you let the coordinators do the play calling and focus specifically on the X's and O's. But as a head coach, you need to be able to lead everything. You need to make sure that all systems are going, and the team is playing as a unit. And I think he was able to do that. I mean, this guy's had, I think they said like 40 years or something of NFL coaching experience. He's been everywhere. He's done everything. And this is the first time he's ever had a chance to be a head coach. And I think he did pretty well. I think he did a deserving enough job to stay the head coach. The problem is, though, is for him anyways, they're going to bring in a new general manager, and that general manager is probably going to want his own guy as the head coach, whoever that's going to be. So I don't think it bodes well for him. I do agree with the Mayock firing, though, because he was tied to Gruden, and you got to get all the Gruden stuff gone from the team now. And people will criticize him as a GM, but I have heard stuff floating around that Mayock, he didn't want to draft Cleveland Farrell back in 2019. He wanted to draft Devin White, and apparently a lot of the draft picks were made because of John Gruden and not because of him. He had different opinions, and I understand that, but this business, GMs and coaches, in my mind, they should go hand in hand. If one goes, the other goes. So John's gone now, Mayock's gone, and it'll be interesting to see what the Raiders do. But I guarantee you, if they don't keep Rick and they do a new head coach next year, I don't think they're going to make the playoffs again. That's just me, though. And let's go ahead now, guys, and flip to the NFC teams to talk about the NFC wild card weekend losers.
Yeah, and I will say really quick to your thing about Pasaccia as well, that like the big thing I think for him, like I know you said it doesn't bode well for him, but like from what I've been reading, like the players want him to come back. Like the players really want him to be named the new head coach. So I think that's one thing that is going to help him a lot, because you got to appease your players. Like if they want a head coach, then you almost have to give it to them, because otherwise, now your morale is going to go down and all this other stuff. So I think that really is going to help him, that they want him to stay. And I definitely agree with you that if they, let go of him and bring in a new head coach, that they'll probably miss the playoffs, especially with the way the AFC West is. Like, it's just too tough for them if they go through a whole regime change.
Definitely. All right, so with the NFC teams now, let's go ahead and talk about the Dallas Cowboys. What a game that was against the 49ers. And there were so many things, so many, stuff going on after the game, talking about how the Cowboys lost the game, what it was, penalties, coaching, players, everything. Connor, what do you lay the blame for with this team? Because coming into the playoffs, on offense, they were number one in all these categories on offense. They were so good. Everyone is talking about how good this offense is, how good the defense has been. All these statistical things they're great at, but they end up falling flat and lose in the wild card round. So what do you place the blame on here?
If I have to place the biggest blame in this game, it has to be on the coaching for me. Like, it has to fall on Mike McCarthy and the coaching staff. I think, basically, first of all, going to, the discipline problems in this game. I mean, discipline 100% goes back to the head coach. I mean, and it's something that I know, obviously, Bruce Arians is a good coach, but it's something that's always been a worrisome thing I'm sure, for Tampa Bay fans, how many penalties they usually take. And that goes back to Arians. Just like here in Dallas, it goes back to Mike McCarthy. They had a lot of costly penalties in that game that really held them back. Really was what lost the game for them in some ways, not always, but in some ways. And like I said, it goes back to the head coach. I can use Buffalo as a good example as it goes back to the head coach, because, Buffalo, when Rex Ryan was the head coach, they were the most penalized team in the league. They were kind of like how Dallas was in that game, or how Tampa Bay's been the last couple of years. They were the most penalized team in the league, and it really held them back. And as soon as they got rid of Rex Ryan and Sean McDermott came in, all that changed. Sean McDermott was a no BS kind of coach. He got rid of all the entertainment stuff they had in like the locker rooms and stuff to, basically like a work first mentality and focus mentality. And Sean McDermott changed the culture in Buffalo, and now they're one of the least penalized teams. So that's the first hit on the coaching staff. Also, I think just the game plan that Kellen Moore was putting out on offense, like there were some plays in that game where I was just like, what in the world are they doing? Like, they got away from the run game super early, which I think was a mistake, especially when you have guys like Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard back there. And also the offensive line they had, getting away from that. And then obviously the main obvious one was that quarterback draw with like 14 seconds left. It's like, what in the world kind of a play call was that? I mean, Dak Prescott, he ran like 7 seconds off the clock, and then the Cowboys players decided that they were going to try and spot the ball themselves instead of giving it to the ref, like you should do every single time. Like you're supposed to give it to the ref because they have to touch it. And then they went to go line up, and because they placed the ball and the ref couldn't get to the ball because they blocked him off from it, and then they lost the game. So that was very questionable. And the Cowboys, I think they also came into this game really, I don't know. I think they really underestimated the 49ers from looking at how they played as well. You can get up on your high horse of like, oh, we're so good. Like Zach said, they were number one on offense in all these categories coming into this game. And, the 49ers defense just gave them a big reality check. And even without Nick Bosa for half the game, they still were able to get to Dak Prescott, make him uncomfortable. Prescott was not making the throws like he usually makes. And it's just a big coaching issue, in my opinion. I think the team probably played as well as they could have against what they were going against. They obviously played more flat, but it comes back to the game plan and the coaching. And it comes back to, some changes are going to have to be made. Unfortunately, I don't see them firing Mike McCarthy, even though I think they should. I don't think they will. But, there's going to have to be some changes in Dallas for sure in the offseason coming up.
All right. Next, let's go ahead and talk about the Arizona Cardinals and their finish. So they were recently eliminated on Monday night to the Rams in that wild card game. And it was a very convincing loss. I mean, this wasn't nearly as close as the Cowboys 49ers game was. So really bad end of the season happened to the Cardinals here. And it's definitely leaving a lot of people wondering, is this a one-off for the Cardinals? Are they going to go back to being at the bottom of the NFC West? Potentially if Russell Wilson comes back, and now we see the Rams and 49ers still going in the playoffs right now. So Nate, I want to ask you I know these are kind of general questions, but what do you think the Cardinals need to do to keep staying competitive in this division? They have the quarterback, they have weapons on offense. Is it offensive line? Is it defense? Is it coaching? What do you think would be the best thing to change?
Yeah, I mean, I think a little bit of everything you just mentioned would help the Cardinals. I think it's just tough to be in that division with obviously a team like the Rams. They already had a stacked roster coming into the year, and then they added guys like Odell and Von Miller, and it's hard to keep up with that kind of talent, even for a team that's very strong and talented like the Cardinals are. And then that's not even to mention that the 49ers are also a playoff team out of that division. So it takes a lot to stay up there. And I think kind of like everything you just mentioned, need to address this offseason, like O-line. Sure, Kyler is a super mobile guy. He's probably one of the best athletes at the position right now, but he also shouldn't have to do that much, create that much on his own. He should have more help to not have, a D line with Aaron Donald and Von Miller. You don't want those guys coming at him every single play and make him have to scramble and do all that crazy stuff. So I think that's definitely should be their first priority this offseason to keep Kyler upright. And then, like you mentioned, the defense, they got J.J. Watt back for the game last night. He really, didn't make too much of a difference. He was a big signing last year, but he is getting old. He's been hurt basically all of the last few years. He's missed at least some time. I don't think that is going to cut it. And I'm a big Chandler Jones fan, but he is also getting up there in age. He looked fine this year, but I think they really do need to address that defense. Again, because your whole thing playing out west is you got to keep up with the Rams. That's really all it comes down to is you can't beat them. If you lose them twice a year, you're already behind the eight balls in terms of making the playoffs and Super Bowl. So it's really just they got to reload on defense, add some more pieces on offense. DeAndre Hopkins is great, but again, it's like AJ Green's the other guy who had kind of a little bit of a comeback this year, but he's also old. I think that's really kind of a theme there with the Cardinals. They've got a ton of like talent, like guys you look at and they're like, oh yeah, that's he's a great player, but they're getting towards the end of their time being productive. I feel like so. I think just across the roster, they've got to be aggressive and draft well and do be smart in free agency and kind of just upgrade everywhere. I think your coaching is. I didn't watch a ton of the game. I came back in the second half and it was already kind of out of hand. I think their coaching is not like terrible. I think better players could help that, but I think really the main thing is the roster because again, it's like you've seen it with all those quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers and recently is these big time quarterbacks when their team is not helping them get in a position to make the Super Bowl and all that. They kind of been asking for trades and want to get out of town. And I think it's huge to keep a guy like Kyler in Arizona as well. So I think that for me, the biggest thing is the roster. I think just they're right there, but it's just the Rams and the Bucks are just, on paper, they're just more talented. And, if you're going to win the NFC right now, you've got to really go all in, I think.
Yeah, for their O-line, definitely I saw needs improvement, and as well as the defense too. So definitely lots of areas that the Cardinals need to improve in. They were so good at the start of the year, but for whatever reason, teams caught on to them, and they really need to make those adjustments and get better personnel, I think, for next season to compete. Or they just have to hope these other teams start to look worse. But we have no proof to that yet in the NFC. But next up on this list here is going to be the last team we'll talk about for the playoff loser segment, and that's going to be the Philadelphia Eagles. They lost handily to the Buccaneers. It was basically over midway through the third quarter, and they were talking about starting Gardner Minshew in the fourth quarter. That's how bad it was going for Hurts in the offense, but they did manage to pick it up at the end. I don't know if that was just the Bucs kind of letting off the gas or if it was, finally them having some success against that tough defense. But Jalen Hurts and the Eagles really struggled. And the big question, dilemma thing that Eagles fans are going to be talking about all offseason is they have 3 first-round picks in this year's draft. And Jalen Hurts is their starting quarterback right here. He's obviously their guy, but they didn't spend a first-round pick on him. They don't have this huge investment in him. And, yeah, he was able to beat out Carson Wentz this year. But as we saw Carson Wentz with another team, that wasn't that hard to do, really. So with Eagles fans, I think it's 50-50 with them believing in Hurts. There's some Eagles fans that are like, yeah, we love Hurts. Hurts is the guy. He's so great. He can run everywhere. And then there's the other 50% of the Eagles fan base that's like, he sucks. Like, we need a new quarterback, I think, anyway. So where do I fall on this list? I don't think Hurts is going to be all that good, honestly. I think a comparable player that I would call Hurts to would be like Teddy Bridgewater, or Cam Newton after his MVP season, post injuries, Cam Newton, someone like that. I think they're a good enough quarterback to start for you, but they're not going to be a great quarterback to take your team to the Super Bowl or anything like that. That's the thing I fear with Hurts. He's a tremendous athlete, but as a quarterback, I just don't see him. Another comparison, people say he's like a Walmart version of Lamar Jackson, like a lesser version of Lamar. And I agree with that as well. I mean, I think he's not going to be as good as that kind of quarterback. But what really stood out to me though is, the drops on this team, like Jalen Reagor. My God, that guy is so bad. Like, I know Eagles fans were hard on him, but after watching him play in that game, I fully understand why they are hard on him. And the offensive line was bad. They got, I just saw, plays where they just got shoved to the ground by the defense. And yeah, the Eagles need some help, but I'm not going to overreact to this and say, Hurts is done. I think a real interesting thing to do here is use these 3 picks on players that can help Hurts and help this team out and see what happens. If they do get better than what happened this year, great. I personally don't think that's going to happen, but I think Hurts showed enough to where they could do that. And in a draft with not great QBs, I think it's okay for them to wait on a quarterback this year, give Hurts another year, see how things go, and really get some help, because they honestly they need another receiver. And even though they've taken back-to-back years of receivers, Reagor is a certified bust. Devontae Smith was good at points in the year, but kind of got lost out there. So I think another good receiver for the Eagles is what they need. Maybe an offensive lineman and maybe a defensive guy, like a pass rusher, is what you should spend those 3 picks on. But yeah, that's gonna wrap up our talk about the Eagles now and about all the playoff losing teams. And
get to the winners.
Yeah, let's get to the winners here. Finally getting to the real playoffs.
Those other teams are losers.
Yeah. So the first, let me try and. Okay, yeah. The first matchup that we're going to talk about is going to be the 49ers and the Packers here. A rematch of the NFC Championship game from 2 years ago, where the 49ers won in San Francisco. Same quarterbacks playing here, Jimmy G and Aaron Rodgers rematch. This time, however, is going to be in Lambeau. So the Packers will have that home field advantage for this. However, I'm on record for, picking against the Packers basically in every matchup in the playoffs since we've done this podcast, probably. And this is going to be no exception. If the Rams were playing the Packers, I probably would pick the Packers, but I just do not like this matchup at all for Green Bay. I think what's going to happen is the 49ers are going to be able to run the ball. They're going to do a very 49ers like game plan and just scheme run all over the Packers. I think that's their offense. They just do that so well. And I see them being able to do it well against the Packers as well. They have all these guys that can rush the football. And then I think Jimmy G will make some plays. I mean, Deebo Samuel is just so good. I think he's arguably, can be more dynamic and do more things definitely than Devontae Adams, even for the Packers. So all these things, great for the 49ers. And I'm still just, I know you can only play who you can play, but the Packers, the wins and stuff they have, they just don't impress me as much. I mean, I just think they play very safe football, play not to lose at times. And I don't know. I just have a feeling Green Bay in the playoffs, I mean, they're going to lose. It's what they do every year. They make the playoffs every year, but they lose before they make the Super Bowl. I think this is a trend that keeps on occurring. And I will have the 49ers winning with a score of 28 to Green Bay's 22. Connor, what about you, though? What do you think in this game?
Yeah, so the problem for me with the 49ers is obviously the most glaring problem that, everyone knows, and that's Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo was pretty single-handedly the reason why the Cowboys were able to get back into that game against them. Like, the Niners were dominating, and then Jimmy G had a couple picks that he threw that really got the Cowboys back into the game and gave them, life in that game. And Jimmy G, like, he's just not good. I mean, it should be his last year in San Francisco. I mean, obviously, if they go further in the playoffs, they'll keep him around, but this should be his last season in San Francisco. Time to see what Trey Lance can do as a full-time starter. They spent the number 3 pick on him to get him, so you might as well, put that investment to work. But the other thing for San Francisco that concerns me is just they're banged up coming into this game. Like, speaking of Jimmy G, he's got some shoulder problems that he's dealing with. Nick Bosa obviously left the game in concussion protocol last week. They say that they're optimistic that he'll play, but who knows? Fred Warner, their main run defense guy, the captain of that defense, he got hurt in the game against Dallas late with an ankle injury. So, and just that defensive line for San Francisco, I think they're going to have a hard time holding up when they go against the Packers' offensive line. The Packers, they have a really good offensive line. Aaron Rodgers has had another MVP type season, and I think the difference this year between past years with the Packers is that their defense is way better this year. They've been able to actually hold their own on the defensive side of the ball. Rashawn Gary has been a monster getting after the quarterback. Zadarius Smith has come back off of IR, and he's going to be playing in this game. I just don't see the 49ers, I don't see Deebo Samuel being able to win this game all by himself on their offense, because he's really the only player on their offense that I trust, and George Kittle too. I forgot about him, but I don't think those two guys are going to be enough to win the game on their own. And, you're going to be going into Lambeau. It's going to be cold. The Niners playing California. They're not used to this cold weather. And I think it'll be closer. I don't think it'll be a blowout, but I definitely think the Packers should win, with relative ease. So I'll give it to the Packers and say they win 31-21. Nate, what about you?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Packers as well. Basically, the reasons you just said. The Niners look fine in the first round, but they got past the Cowboys. But I don't trust Jimmy G to get it done versus a well-coached, talented Packers team, especially with Aaron Rodgers on the other side. So I'm gonna go Packers. I'll go Packers 28, San Fran 13.
All right, this will definitely be an interesting one next week when we look back on, either I'm going to be really right or really wrong. Same with you guys.
I was also going to say, for the record, Eric is also picking the Green Bay Packers. So
yeah,
Zach is alone.
I'm on an island. One of our favorite guests, Caleb, I'm almost 100% sure he's taking Green Bay. So
what? Even more... Caleb picking the Packers? No.
The next NFC matchup, though, this is a rematch from earlier in the year. It's going to be the Rams and Bucks. Nate, go ahead and preview this one and tell us who you got.
Yeah, so for me, this is probably the most interesting game of the weekend. No disrespect to the Bills and Chiefs, that should be entertaining as well. But I just think these are two super talented rosters. Their first go around was pretty entertaining. The Rams won somewhat comfortably, if I remember it. The Bucks kind of came back in garbage time, but I think this go around is going to be really interesting. It's in Tampa this time. I think the Rams have added even more pieces since their last meetup. OBJ is basically came right in and is looking like his giant self. So I think it's going to be a really interesting one. Have a hard time obviously picking against Tom Brady, my favorite player of all time. I think he's done incredible things this year at his age, and I never bet against him in the playoffs, but I do think this is a very tough matchup, especially with Chris Godwin's been out for the season. They get Fournette back, I believe, possibly this week. But I think Godwin being out, they've got some other injuries, I think, on the O-line and on defense. I think it's going to be a tough one to get past with the Rams Rams are pretty much full strength. So I think it's going to be they're not gonna go down without a fight. The Bucks, I think it will be close, but I'm as much as I hate to do this, I don't feel confident in it. My mind tells me that it's gonna be Rams 33, Bucks 28. So
Wow, that's a shocker.
yeah,
Nate is picking against Tom Brady, going on the record.
yep.
Yep. We'll see how that
Well,
goes.
it'll probably go against me, but just the way it just looks so
You
shaky the
will,
last few
yeah,
games. But we'll
yeah,
see.
you will be upset if you're wrong, probably. But I'm gonna pick the Bucks in this one. Uh, I'm not too concerned about the Rams beating them earlier in the season. Last year they lost to the Saints twice in the regular season, faced them in the playoffs and beat them. They lost to the Chiefs in the regular season. They beat them. So I really think that has nothing to do with it. The bigger concern for the Bucks would be the injuries to the offensive line, but even still with that, it's just impossible for me not to pick against Brady. And when I talked about the Rams before the season ended, or before right after the season ended and the playoffs started, I was still concerned about the Rams. I mean, people will see what happened on Monday night and forget all the bad things that were going on with the Rams right before that wild card game. So, whereas the Bucks, I really don't think there's anything bad going on. I mean, they easily handled the Eagles. They showed no signs of anything bad against the Carolina Panthers at the end of the year. So, I think the Bucks win pretty soundly. I will say with a final score 35-22. Bucks win. Connor, what about you?
Yeah, this is definitely a tough one. Like Nate said, this one and the Bills Chiefs one are definitely going to be very interesting games. This was a tough one for me to pick. I mean, the Rams obviously they did get a little bit hot towards the end of the season. They like Nate said they are at full strength. The Bucks, I don't think it's a guarantee that Leonard Fournette comes back. Because I know they thought he was going to play the Eagles game, but obviously he was having. They said he was still having trouble getting up to top speed. Ronald Jones is likely still going to be out. Ryan Jensen and Tristan Wirfs both went down with injuries in that game. Sean Murphy Bunting is still dealing with some injury problems. Like they're just banged up all over the board. But that being said, I still just don't trust the Rams. They've had moments this year where it looked like, they were supposed to be, all right, the Rams really are. They're going to be like this top team in the NFC, Matthew Stafford for MVP. And then you have other weeks where Matthew Stafford in the Rams look like they're the Detroit Lions. So they look like a reincarnation of Stafford with the Lions. So given that the Buccaneers are at home, I'm just going to give that to them as the advantage in this game, despite being banged up. And obviously, like you said, it's Tom Brady in the playoffs. It's hard to pick against him. And the Bucks, they have the experience of being here. Matthew Stafford only just now got his first playoff win on Monday night. So I'm going to take the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's going to be a close game, and I'm going to say the Buccaneers are going to win probably 28-27, a 1-point game.
All right, and let's go on to the AFC side of things now and talk about those two matchups, starting with the Bengals at the
The
Titans.
Bengals.
Yep, the Cincinnati Bengals are still in the playoffs. They won a playoff game finally.
You can finally text someone that the Bengals won a playoff game.
Yeah, trust me, it's happened a lot. I know on Twitter that was a big thing going on after they won the game. Send the text message. Who sent the first text message? But they've got that's great. Beating the Raiders is great. I love Joe Burrow's confidence and his attitude after that win, where they were asking him, "Wow, like you just finally broke the curse or whatever, the 30-year playoff drought. Like, how does this feel to finally win a playoff game for this team in the city?" And he was like, "That's cool, but we expected to win this, and we're not done. We have bigger things ahead to celebrate than just one playoff win," which I thought was a great attitude to have. I mean, that's Joe Burrow is one of my favorite quarterbacks in the NFL, and the way he responded to those questions, that question was great in my opinion. But the road gets tougher as you go along in the playoffs, and they got to face the 1 seed, the Tennessee Titans, with Derrick Henry back. I just think the Titans are too good of a team playing at home. It's going to be real tough for, I think, the Bengals to win. I hope I'm wrong, obviously, in this one. This is one I'm hoping I'm wrong in. But I've watched a lot of Tennessee this year. They're very good. I think people kind of underrate them, but they have wins against the Chiefs, the Bills, some other good playoff teams too. So the Titans are the real deal, and I think they're going to win this. I think it'll be very close, though. I will say I'm going to say score of 30-27 for Tennessee. The Bengals come up just short, but they make this a game. This is going to be a very good game to watch, in my opinion. Connor, what about you? What do you think happens here?
Yeah, for me, like you said, the road gets tougher for Cincinnati, and this is really going to be, I think, the wake-up call for them, because I think it is interesting to me when you look at the dynamics of how Cincinnati got to the playoffs, and, the AFC North was a close division all year long, but I don't think the AFC North was necessarily a tough division per se, or filled with tough teams, I will say, because normally in the past you have the Bengals and the Ravens and the Steelers all fighting it out, and I think the Bengals, when we really look back on it, the Bengals were the clear-cut top team in that division, and they didn't really have to go through as much to get here. So maybe their record is a little bit inflated, but they definitely played well against the Raiders. There was some controversial officiating, having flashbacks to the Patriots Jaguars early whistle sort of thing going on there. I don't know what the refs were thinking. It was like they did the wrong thing by blowing the whistle, and then they followed it up by doing the wrong thing after that and calling it a touchdown. So needless to say, those guys won't be reffing another game this postseason. But like I said, the Titans, to me, like Zach said, the Titans seem like they're for real. I mean, I think they got underrated a lot this year. I mean, it's one of those things to look at. They still got the 1 seed, not having Derrick Henry, having injuries to Julio Jones and A.J. Brown all year, and they're still the 1 seed. And now they're going to get Derrick Henry back. They're fully healthy. I expect Derrick Henry to come back in a monster way. This Bengals run defense is not really that good. Like, they have a good pass rush going, but they're kind of susceptible against the run game. So I think Derrick Henry is going to have over 100 yards, 2 touchdowns, and the Titans are going to win it 35-28. Nate, what about you?
Yeah, I agree with you on the Titans. I do think that they are underrated. Maybe just they play in the AFC South, or Derrick Henry's been out all year, so maybe they didn't get as much attention. But I think they've been kind of under the radar. And as much as I also like Joe Burrow, I think he's one of my favorite young players. But I do think that the Titans have a stronger roster, stronger defense, and the Bengals barely squeaked by the Raiders last week, who are a solid team, but I think that the Titans can throw a lot more at them, especially on defense. So I think not going to be a high-scoring game, in my opinion, but I think I'm going to go Titans 24, Bengals 17.
All right, and then let's preview the final AFC divisional round game, and that's between the Bills and Chiefs. Connor, give us your insight on this one.
Yeah, very, very fitting for me. I know Nate said he thinks the Rams-Bucks is going to be the best game. I think this is going to be the best game of the week, and very fitting it's going to be the last game on TV. The Bills at the Chiefs, these two teams met earlier in the season. I believe it was at Arrowhead earlier in the season as well, and the Bills were able to come out with a win. Now, the difference between that and now, kind of like how, Zach alluded to when the Rams beat the Bucks earlier in the season, that was like week 4 or week 5 of the season. The Bills pretty handily beat them, but the Chiefs were in the middle of some weird funk that they were in that part of the season where they looked like, I know there was a lot of overreactions happening. I even somewhat bought into it that the Chiefs had the potential to miss the playoffs if things didn't turn around. And just wasn't looking good for them, especially since like 2 weeks later they gotten crushed by the Titans. So, but the Chiefs have really turned it around since that. They've gone on a long winning streak to end the season. You know, their only loss near the end actually coming to the Bengals in Cincinnati. But other than that, they had won every game since they had that blowout loss to the Titans, even winning against Green Bay, who's the top seed in the NFC. So, I mean, Patrick Mahomes, he's gotten his form back. They found their offense back. You know, Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill are producing the way they always produce. But then, of course, on the other side, you have Josh Allen and the Bills. They've really found their run game towards the end of the year, which has been really key for them. Devin Singletary's had a few good games in a row where he's gotten 80 to 90 plus yards every game. You know, Josh Allen's making the right decisions. He was making some dumb interceptions in some of those games that they were losing to, like, the Jaguars and, you know, when they lost to the Buccaneers. But it seems like he's really found his game again. The Bills defense, you know, they're the number one ranked defense. But I think the difference that's going to make the difference in this game is this is by far, it's weird to say this, but it's by far the best, especially since early in the season we didn't think this. This is the best defense that the Kansas City Chiefs have fielded in the 3 years that we've been doing this podcast. And it's really because they were able to make a change in the middle of the season when they were able to put Chris Jones back into the interior offensive line rather than having him play out on the edge like they were early in the year. And credit to Steve Spagnuolo, this unit is a tough, tough unit. And Arrowhead is a tough, tough place to play in. So as much as I want the Bills to come out on top in this game, I'm going to have to go with the Kansas City Chiefs. I think I just trust Patrick Mahomes more in this scenario, and I trust Andy Reid. And Sean McDermott's a great coach as well, but the Chiefs just have the experience and the pedigree, and they're the home team. So I'm going to say the Kansas City Chiefs win. I'm going to say they take this win 28-24. Zach, what about you?
Yeah, this is definitely a fascinating matchup. I remember there were very high expectations for this game last year when they met in the conference championship, and it ended up being kind of a dud with Kansas City, you know, winning pretty easily. I don't think that'll be the case this time again. I think it's going to be a much closer game. And I still have the Chiefs winning, but for the Bills, I think they'll have a great shot if they can get an early lead on the Chiefs and really keep up the pressure on Mahomes. Because, you know, with the Steelers game, it was looking iffy for like a quarter and a half there. And then the Chiefs all of a sudden looked invincible against a very good Steelers defense. So that's really what makes me, you know, concerned about picking the Bills is the Bills have a very good defense, but I know this, you know, the Steelers have a good defense as well. And the Chiefs just, you know, scored like 3 touchdowns in 5 minutes or something like that. And it's all of a sudden the game's over. And they have the capability of doing that to anybody. Like you said, the Chiefs defense got better. That it's going to be a fun matchups to watch all around the board though. But like you said, at home in Kansas City, it's hard to pick against, just like I said, it's hard to pick against Brady in the playoffs. It's also hard to pick against the Chiefs. That's how good they've been the last 3 or 4 years. So I will go Chiefs with the score pretty similar to what Connor said, 35-28, I think. Is that what you said?
That was my score for the Titans Bengals. I said 28-24 for this game.
28-24. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. I'll be a little different though. I'll say 28-26.
Bill's going to get a 2-point conversion thrown in there somewhere, or a safety or something.
Might just be a lot of field goals, actually. Maybe a lot of field goals.
Not a very common score, 26, but, you know, it can happen.
Yeah. Nate, what about you, though? Close off the discussion here and tell us what you think happens.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be, like you guys said, a really interesting game. I think it's going to be a close game, too. I mean, these teams, obviously everyone knows Chiefs offense. I think the Bills have enough talent to keep up with them. They're one of the few teams, I think, with, you know, the juice on offense to do that. They do have a very solid defense. So I mean, I hope this isn't, you know, my heart over my head here, but I'm going to go Bills over Chiefs. I just think the Chiefs have been way too up and down this year, and they've been hot lately, but I don't think it's going to be enough to get it done. I'm going to go Bills 31, Chiefs 24.
All right, so we're not all in agreement on that one, as Nate is going with the Bills, but that's going to wrap up this episode, guys. Hopefully, you enjoyed listening to our coverage about all the losing teams, especially because, as we go forward, the main emphasis is, of course, on the Super Bowl and the games, that remain ahead on the schedule. So we're going to obviously be focusing a lot on the Super Bowl and the teams that go into that. But these teams that lose, they're very good teams that a lot of times are a player away or several players away from being a Super Bowl type team, and we'll see what happens next year. But it's always fun to kind of look and see what would you do different with these teams, coaching, quarterback, surrounding cast, all that sort of stuff. So hopefully you guys enjoy listening to that. Let us know on Twitter any thoughts or suggestions going forward with future episodes. And we'll be back doing this in the same sort of format next week, talking about these losers in these games and previewing the conference championships. Until then, though, remember, be clutch.
Bye.
See ya.
And for Eric, peace.